Welcome to the Tradies in Business podcast. Join your host, Nicole Cox, as she dives into the real stories, tips, secrets, and stuff-ups from guests both inside and outside the trade world. Nick is here to help you break free from the grind, reduce money stress, and build a trade business that truly works for you. So grab a brew, put your phone on silent, and get ready to be inspired.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another special guest episode here on Tradies in Business podcast. I am joined by someone I call a dear friend, actually, and I'm very excited to be able to bring her to your ears today as we talk about success and mindset. Di Russell, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here, Nick. Thank you.
I was very excited when I saw the schedule for today as well. Di, as I was sharing with you before we jumped and press record, I've had to work really hard today to actually write questions, which is something I don't ever do, but because I have such an experience with you in my own life, I didn't want to necessarily bring that into the listeners' ears today. So I'm going to start this today by getting out of the way and asking you, could you tell us, please, a little bit about how you become to me today to be talking about all things success and mindset?
Yes, I'll try and do this really quickly. However, my journey has been incredible in that I had a very challenging childhood with a lot of abuse in that, and then I emerged into my young adulthood very shy and withdrawn and just trying to stay out of the way of anybody and everybody. I got married, had a couple of children, and then my husband passed away. So that was my first massive wake-up call, which I didn't hear at all. Until my daughter demanded her daddy only months in. She was 2 and a bit, and I had a little 3-month-old. And on this day, Amy she'd had enough, I'd had enough, we'd all been sick. And when she, screamed the words at me, I just want my daddy. And I got up from the floor. I was on the floor with her, and I just raced down to the nursery and I slammed the door, and I basically stood there with my hands on my hips and demanded of God to clean up this shit show all my life. Because I was 22 at the time and I wanted to be a stay-at-home mum, and now all my dreams were just in shatters, and I didn't know. I had no idea. I really had no idea. And that was back in the day, no mobile phones, no internet. I was living in Port Augusta in the mid-north of South Australia, and I just was beside myself. I was so angry, and I think that was the first time I'd admitted that I was. So in that moment, I actually did a rant to God, and at the end of it, I said, "This is not what I wanted for my life." And I just was spitting the words out. And then I gasped for air because I've been ranting for however long. And the words, "What do you want?" landed in my head. And I was actually stunned because I thought, I don't think I've ever asked myself what I want. I've just been bashing what life's been throwing at me and trying to stay, looking like nothing, nothing to see here. So I walked back down the passage very, very thoughtful. And from that moment on, I was very aware that there was more in me. And it was quite interesting. I went on to remarry, start a business. We then became business owners with 3 children by that stage and a home, and on life went. And then that marriage ended 23 years later. So there's a lot, obviously, water under a bridge there. But in the ending of that, there was another moment for me where I was just like, I'm just not understanding how life works clearly. Like, I was an intelligent woman, straight A student at school, but could not string together, anything too remarkable in life as far as I could see. So I actually typed into my Google search living authentically that day because I thought to myself, I've got to get my shit together and I don't even know what that looks like. So living authentically came up. I typed it in and Mr. Bob Proctor popped up on my screen via YouTube, and that was my biggest turning point. I was desperate, living on my own for the first time in my life. I was nearly 50 and I thought, right, I'm running out of time and I certainly have no ideas. So I listened to him. I went over and worked with him for the next 6 years in Canada, back and forth from Australia. Thank goodness I did. Jumped in when I did because he passed in 2022. And we became very, very close friends. So I have had a lifetime of wealth of knowledge delivered to me in a short space of time. Very grateful for that. And that's what saw me become what I call a success and mindset coach, because I absolutely know that it's our mindset that is where it all starts, or ends. And success is about being ourselves and expressing who and what that is. So,
Di, you had a really great explanation of success off air previously when we were chatting. And I would love if you would share that with our listeners, because I think that success can look different. Well, it should look different to everybody. And your particular version really resonated with me. I think it could be very helpful for our listeners.
is that the older version of the progressive realization of the worthy ideal? Is that the one?
No, but I like that as well. We were talking about joy and
Yes.
yeah, finding the joy and keeping with the joy.
Absolutely. Because the basis of our life, as I've now learned, like the life in us, is looking to be expressed in some way, which is, like you said, individual to all of us. And when we're truly doing that, we feel joy. And it doesn't matter whether I live in a mansion or on a beach in a tent. I'm the one that gets to measure whether that's success or not by the way I feel,
Mm.
right? Yes.
It's just so important, I think. I think particularly when we're younger and we come into this, it's a real ego space that we live in when we're younger. And so often our version of success is driven by what we physically attain. And yet so much of that doesn't leave us with that feeling of joy. And I think it's healthy that there are periods in our life that perhaps that's how success is defined. But I love watching the journey that particularly the business owners that I work with go on
Yeah.
till they arrive at this point where they realize that joy to them is actually being home at 3 p.m. every afternoon so they can pick the kids up from school, or it's having a long weekend every month rather than getting stuck working overtime to try and make up for a lack somewhere else in their business. So joy and success can be defined the way it works for them instead of having to reach somebody else's ideal.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. And having been a business owner, in fact, the business I was in has just closed after 30 years. And, there was a lot of joy in that, but there was a lot of struggle. And I felt like I traded a lot of my life for business. And that's why I think you and I love chatting, is because I lived that and I have a lot of what not to do. Uh, And I also now, being a business owner, understand that, yeah, we're here to just express what's us in any way. And it doesn't necessarily mean more every year, more income and more growing, growing, growing. The growth is in us, not necessarily in our physical havings.
Yes, so, so, so true. Okay. Got to go to my standard questions now. Otherwise, I'm going to take us down a rabbit hole that serves me and not everyone who's listening. All right. You have worked with leaders all over the world. What do you see as the biggest mindset block holding small business owners back from their version of success?
This may surprise you. However, this is, you were saying earlier how I learn and how I grow. This has been my biggest realization, and sharply so in the last month. The biggest block I feel that holds business owners back is a lack of relationship with themselves.
Oh, that's a clanger. How do you see that showing up and how does it impact them in a way? Because I don't believe that most of us would even, like, that's a broad concept in and of itself. So how do you see that showing up, Ty?
And it's so funny you say that. It does sound broad. However, I even see that as a method where we go, oh, that's just too big to bite off. But if I was to say to any of you listening today, how do you feel about you? How do you feel when you sit down and have a cup of tea in the sun for 15 minutes in the middle of a workday? What's going on in your head? It's like, it's big, but it's small as well. It's in the small things that we recognize whether we have a great relationship with ourselves or not. And this is dear to my heart because man, oh man, I was so far from that when I started this work, to the point that my mentor said to me one day, you've got to love yourself. You've got to wake up in the morning and kiss yourself. And he kissed the back of his hand and I nearly threw up. I honestly thought, I cannot do this with you That's just absurd. And now I know that unless we have a great relationship with ourselves, everything else is just a bit of a Band-Aid, really. If we go back to the joy, yeah, we got to feel it here first. And we will not allow ourselves to do that if we don't actually love ourselves and have a good relationship with us.
Sadly, I think most of the people listening to this podcast don't make time for that. I don't know that I make enough time for it, to be fair, even as you say that. And I'm thinking always about myself first, it's, as we do. And I'm thinking, wow, I don't think many of us make enough time to even just check in and think about how we feel about ourselves and then how that impacts the way we experience life and the way others experience us.
Yes. And you're onto it there, because it's like it's not about just going for massages and having facials and sort of, pampering ourselves. It's allowing ourselves to do what lights us up. And this is really my message in all the modalities that I teach and nurture people, is to help them understand, to listen in and to just follow the guidance within you, what feels good for you today and in this moment. Because, yeah, if we don't listen to that, then we're off the path a lot of the time.
It's going to be a big change for a lot of our listeners, I think, already. Okay. That was only question 1, Di. And we've got more. In your experience, what is the difference between somebody who just gets by in business and someone who really thrives? Is it a strategy, or do you think it's something deeper?
I like this question. And I'll be honest, I think it does go back to what we've just said. Thriving is about joy in us. However, I will admit, when I got into this work, this mindset, I was just so excited by it. And as I began this business that I'm in, I jumped so far over the other side of mindset that I've been really good at strategy. And when I say strategy, I mean just the day-to-day, setting up your routines and, budgeting and planning your days and all that. I was so good at that. And then I sort of dropped that and just was so engulfed in the mindset. And I think it has to be a balance. However, to me, there's always a framework, and that is being aware of what you're aware of. Like, notice what you're noticing is step number 1. So you might be noticing, I love this, I feel really good doing this, or this is feeling like an uphill, battle, or, there's something over here that's really pulling me. So the awareness, I believe, is the key, whether it's in the strategy or in the mindset. Awareness is number 1.
Mm-hmm. Di, what do you say? So I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about some of the people in my life, clients, friends, family. And I'm thinking, if they decided to live what brought them joy, it would mean some pretty big shifts in their day-to-day lives, which could be really quite terrifying for someone. How do you start on that journey without it being massively, immediately disruptive?
Mm. That's such a good question. And it's a bit like, do you service your car regularly, or do you just go along because you think servicing it's going to disrupt your routine? Or do you wait until the car breaks down completely and really disrupts the routine? And that's how I see this. And in my experience over the last 10 years, as I've walked this, is that, yes, disruption will be part of your day, part of your life as we grow. Like, if you look at a seed in the ground, it's pretty disruptive as that plant begins to grow. It looks like things are falling apart, but it's growth. And if you take that from a human perspective, and I think of my own journey, when I noticed what I noticed, like, this is not good, and I feel drawn to this, all I did was take one step. My whole life didn't change in that moment, but it did. The 90-degree turn that it took. And so I could tell you story upon story where I kept walking forward, thinking, yeah, this is heading me in a different direction. And in the back of my mind, it's like, how on earth is this all going to come together? I can tell you everything I needed came in ways I couldn't have even imagined if I'd sat down to map it out. So I know that awareness is the key. And if we'll just follow that desire of our heart, and really that's the work in this mindset game is, really understanding the desire of your heart. We're so good. You and I were talking before about, delivering ourselves bullshit and we believe it
Yeah.
and try to sell it to ourselves, but we know it's not us.
Yeah. Well, I'm very good at convincing myself of the bullshit that's going around in my head.
Yeah.
Very good. But I find it much, much harder to convince myself of what I know could be true, because it's easier for me to prove to myself that this bullshit is real than what I think could be true, because it's amazing and positive. And then all that other stuff goes on in my head that stops me from believing that that could actually happen.
And I was only saying to a group just before we jumped on here that it's what we affirm as true for ourselves that we will see in our lives. And so if we are not prepared to affirm, yes, this success, this change, this makeover is true for me, then we won't. And if we keep affirming that, this is the rut I'm stuck in and this is how it has to be and this is my life and my lot in life, then I lived that for such the longest time. Like my husband died and I literally did not, there was no blip on the radar. It was like, yeah, of course, this is my shitty life. And it wasn't until my daughter really hammered me with her moment that it broke me apart.
Yeah. It's fascinating what we will put up with.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And a lot of that's because of the fear, like I said. What happens if I do go with this? And then we start making up stories about how we think it's going to look because of all the changes we're making. And it's so far from the truth.
I find so many people are frightened of success and consciously and unconsciously block themselves from receiving their version of success. But it's actually the thing that they crave. And the only reason I can see it is because I'm looking from the outside in, and because of the type of people I'm working with. And I don't know necessarily why we do that, other than I feel that many of us don't believe we are worthy of what we determine success to look like. And I think that's where this kind of work can really shift up your perspective and your true believing.
Oh, yes. If I can just quickly say, the program running in us is in our subconscious. So if you think about that word subconscious, it's beneath our conscious awareness and it will dictate what we do. Now, all of us have had trauma of some sort, and trauma just means something outside of us happened to us and it changed that programming in us. And so I want to say loud and clear to everyone listening to this that if you're behaving in a certain way, and I'll just say I had some ways of behavior that used to absolutely, I hated them, but I just couldn't change it. I just thought, well, this must be just me. Now I know that the trauma, no matter how big it is in your life, it's changed the programming in you, and you're going to behave that way forevermore until you change that. And part of the change is becoming aware of it. A big part of the change.
Okay. In my experience, tradies often say things like, I'm just a builder, I'm just a chippy, I'm just a plasterer, I'm just a plumber. Not a business person. So they struggle to make the connection between the two. And there is one. What's your advice for somebody who is stuck in that persistent belief, I am just a?
So funny as I meet, especially couples that are in business together, because that was me, right? I was just a housewife who just ended up running a company in 2 states in Australia for 30 years with employees and all sorts of things and serving many, many organizations. And so the mother or the wife in the tradie organization is just the mum or the paperwork person, and the tradie is just the person, the technician who does the work. Now, you can hear how silly it is in a sense, like my just a plumber is my life, and my bathroom isn't operating well.
Absolutely.
So I just want to say to everyone out there, I don't care what it is you do. If you look at the big web of service that we all are interdependent on each other to live the lives that we live, you are changing lives. I don't care if you're digging trenches or what you're doing. You're changing lives because you're providing a service that you enjoy. I'm hoping you enjoy providing that service. And And what you said, Nick, when people say, I'm just, and I used to say, I'm just a mum. I'm just a mum raising 3 human beings that are now, constructively out there doing their best too. So I just, I just, we have to take notice what's going on in our own self-talk and definitely what comes out of our mouth, because it's creative. Thought is energy and it's creative. So
It's a big concept. It's huge. Okay. What role do you believe that daily routine or structured time or the structure, I guess, play in your mindset and then therefore success? Are there any habits, if you like, that you would recommend that have a big impact over time?
yes, there are. This is something very near and dear to my heart because before I did the mindset work, I was very structured. So my days were carved out and I, had them full of doing stuff. And if you think about our life, and I have a catch cry, living a life you love. That's what I'm about, living a life you love. What is a life? A life is made up of years. The years are made up of months, made up of weeks, made up of days, made up of hours. And so I got to thinking, if I can take care of my hours, then that's going to start building a life I love. Okay. If I'm noticing I've got hours and hours upon hours doing things I really don't love, one, I'm not feeling enjoy. I'm not enjoying my life. And it starts there. So, one of the very basic routines that I have, and many people look at me weird when I say this, but I study every day. Now, when I say study, I mean I practice. So, I practice gratitude every morning. I practice connecting with my vision every morning. And I provide this for the people that work with me as a baseline. They can do it at 5:30 in the morning like I do on a live Zoom with the cameras off, mind you, because none of us want to see each other at that time. And then we have the recording. It's 40 minutes a day, Monday to Friday, and we focused on us. And so, one, you've got to think yourself important enough for that to happen. Like there's so many other things to focus on in your day. But if you'll start with that and understand, as I lead them through every day, they understand the importance and the power of that. Because if we become what we think about, which we do, and we'll do that every day, and then we have 15 minutes where they'll read a book, and I've got dozens of books to suggest for people that will just help them grow in their awareness and their power to carve out this life that they want. So yeah, that's one practice, and we call it the practice in our community. The other one is planning, and I am hot on this. Like to plan your weeks, and it can take me 2 hours to plan my week sometimes. But then I just walk through the plan, not necessarily as it looks, but I know I can just walk through it and everything that I want to do and needs to be done is in there. But if things change, it's so easy then. You've got such flexibility to make the most of your moments in your week. So I think they're two of the big practices that we and routines that I find a lot of business owners don't do.
Nope, they don't. And I'm thinking about something you said earlier on the first part, giving yourself that 40 minutes in the morning that you spend with your clients or the people that you work with. And the feeling worthy enough to give yourself that time. It can be very hard to shift your mindset around self-worth in that way and creating the opportunity for space and time, as
Yeah.
I'm preaching to the converted here. But I'm thinking about that busyness of life. We're overwhelmed in our business. We're overwhelmed with our families. We have far, far too much that we've committed to, and it's not paying the financial dividends that we need. I feel like I'm on this roundabout and nothing's working. Why would I even prioritize myself in those moments? Why would that be something that I should be thinking about? And how do I shift my energy so that I can understand that I actually deserve that time and the focused space?
Such a good question. And I think we have to look at the basics of who we are as a human being. And I say that deliberately. We have a human body, but we have a being in us. I watched my father pass away, and it's basic in the sense that we understand the being part of us leaves the body. then that's just a body. So as a human being, there are laws that govern the way we're going to live our days and what we're going to experience. And a very, very high portion of what we experience is connected to what we think and what we vision, and the way we see ourselves. And so that 40 minutes, which, by the way, when people first start, there was one lady years ago, she's in a very different space now, but she said, I can't do that. I said, okay, let's make it 5 minutes. And so everyone can do 5 minutes, right? So we structured it so that, and then she got to the point where she's like, I need to do this. Like, I can't. She went away for a holiday and she's like, I had to do it while I was away because it just feels so good. Because it really literally is like checking your roadmap to say, this is where I'm off to today. This is my intention. Like, none of us would go on a world trip and just, not do that. Like, just sit there in our room and think, I'm just here. I have no intention. You're gonna have a look at where you desire to go that day. And that's what that is. Tapping in, checking in. And I've had many, many moments where I'll, drag myself out of bed and I sit at my desk at 5:30 and I, get the things started for everyone to jump on. And by the end of the 40 minutes, I feel so different. So different. So
It's amazing how often we self-sabotage and get in the way. When you think about, but I think we all intuitively know what makes us feel good inside. And yet we almost punish ourselves and prevent ourselves from enjoying those moments. That this is what you're talking about here is very much one of those. And I think, if I think broadly about conversations I have with lots of our business owners, they don't exercise anymore. They don't practice gratitude. They don't consciously redirect thoughts when invasive thoughts are getting in. Like they actually don't reward themselves in those ways. And it shouldn't actually even be a reward. It should be very much part of your everyday being, the joy that you bring to yourself.
yeah.
Why do we punish ourselves in
But here's the thing though. I've got a little granddaughter. I've got, as some of your listeners know, 6 grandchildren.
Mhm.
And I've had the joy of watching these human beings grow from being little to being, one's 15 now, and watching how they change as society and the media and all of that starts to get into their head. Now, my little granddaughter at 2, she doesn't know about, you know, unforgiveness or holding a grudge or, she just knows joy. And you gravitate towards them because all they know is that. So I want to first off say, go easy on yourself, all of it, because we do gravitate towards the whole, I'm not worth it. And when you think about it, you're giving up your exercise, your family time, the things you love in order to run a business to serve people, and you're not serving you first. So one, it's not sustainable and something is going to give. So if you need any inspiration as to spend time with yourself and to really invest in yourself, I will say that if we don't invest in ourselves, we're investing in something else. And we've got to come first. For me, it was my daughters. Right? I know I'd come from a long line of what I'd come from. And I just thought, you know what? This stops here. And yep, it was messy turning that ship. I can tell you it was messy. But I do know that we've turned the ship, we've turned the tide, and the next generations are not going to be so habitual in what I was habitual in.
It's a great motivator, isn't it? Your family, particularly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you will benefit from it. Like, there's no way. I've spent a lot of money in my self-development, but there is nothing I valued more highly because I can now see, my daughters and my daughter's children are living very differently. So
It's lovely to have that reflection, that moment in your life where you get to see how what you've done has made a significant shift for the rest of your family. That's the same can be said the other way, Di. The things that you're not doing create an outcome for your families as well.
and so I do want to say again, what you do for you is going to make the biggest impact on your children. I had a daughter who she took the hard road, if let's say, and I got to a point I didn't know how to turn her around. There was nothing more I could do. And my very wise mentor said, you need to become better yourself. And in lifting yourself, you'll lift her. And I remember thinking, he was the best in the world at what he did. And I remember sitting there thinking, you got no idea who we're working here with, Bob, like this woman. But I did what he said, and I'm delighted to tell you it's true. Like you don't have to go out and wrestle this stuff to the ground. You just got to love you, be the best you can be, and you're going to rise people up all around you
Mm-hmm.
that you have no idea about.
Mm. Yeah, it's amazing the impact we have on others that we do not have a clue about. Something we should be really mindful of. Di, lots of our listeners struggle with self-doubt, especially when stepping into the role of leadership in their business. So they're beginning to employ people, they're taking on that role of leadership. How do people shift into a more confident and grounded version of themselves?
Mm. Well, I think there's a lot in that question. So when I was moving into leadership, when I didn't ever see myself as a leader, and we were in a business and starting to employ people interstate, and I truly had no idea what I was doing, except that we were building something. And so step number one is your vision. Like, if we ever have the privilege of a conversation together, you'll start to understand that your vision is bigger than you. It's the biggest part of you, and you're infused with your vision by the very life in you. That's the saddest part when someone passes away, is their vision. That's it. It's gone. The way you're going to bring this to the world is yours. So let yourself dream and get so in touch with your vision. I've been watching the Giro d'Italia. My son-in-law is racing in it, and he had a vision as a school boy to be a professional athlete, which he's now been for 13 years. And
Wow.
Damien Howson, if you want to look him up. Anyway, I'm watching them climb these mountains, and I'm thinking, what makes somebody want to do this for hours and hours, day after day, for 21 days? It's their vision, right? They have got a vision and they're locked in on it. And it doesn't matter what your vision is, that's what will inspire you. Like, you'll be in the spirit of your vision. So when I was building a company, I'd come from just being a housewife. I didn't have any uni degrees or anything, but I was given what I needed as I stepped into it. So you'll recruit, people outside of you. I got into the local business chamber, and they, gave me all the legal stuff I needed. There were calls I could jump on. You'll get everything you need, but your vision is what will cause you to step forward and work out what you need. And then you'll find what you need as you go. So the self-doubt comes because you're actually thinking along a line of thought that isn't leading to the outcome of your vision. Because if you do think along the lines of your outcome of your vision, like I was building this company in 2 states, I was so hooked on that. I just kept on doing what was in line with that, So, and every time I took a step forward and it came together, and I thought, oh, look at that. And there's another piece of my confidence, in a sense. But know that your vision is for you. You will not be given a vision and a desire for something that you don't have the power in you to step into. That is true, okay? If we believe that and we step forward, you'll find what you need to grow, what you must grow in order to move forward. I've experienced that. And the same is true. If you're stepping in your mind down a dark, you'll get what you need to be that too.
So true, isn't it? Okay, you've built and led teams for nearly 3 decades. What's the most underrated thing you feel a business owner can do to help create a better team culture?
So you mean the best thing they can do to build a good team culture? I have to say, authentic communication. Yeah, we had a team of 19 at the height across 2 states in Perth and Adelaide, and having meetings with them monthly was what we did over Zoom. But also, when I would go into work, and it didn't take long, I'd always go and see them all and just say, how you doing? Just hello, just treating them like people that they are, and really understanding where they're at in their life. Like, work is a big part of our life. And I think that was the biggest thing that really, I had a woman that worked on our team with me for 23 years. And I'm sure she had better offers and she definitely could have gone and done more, but she stayed. And she knew what was going on every step of the way. Like we brought people with us in our vision. So
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
easy.
yeah, definitely that. And letting them know they matter. you
Yeah,
know?
so important.
Yeah.
So important. And it's not hard to do. It really isn't.
No, especially when you're good with you. Like again, when you're good with you, that will just happen as a matter of
Mm.
course.
So much of what we're talking about is all tied back to the very similar principles as we spoke about in the beginning. Okay. What do you say to business owners who feel like they're doing everything right, but they're still not seeing the results?
It's funny. Someone said at the beginning of the year to me, you know what? It always works out in the end. And if it's not working out, it's not the end. And I mean, it sounds flippant, but if you feel like you're doing everything right, even that statement, I'm doing everything right, I would say have a look at who you're being.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not about what you do, it's about the way you do what you do. Yeah, and that way comes from the spirit in which you do what you do. And so if we're in a spirit of fear and worry and self-doubt and, looking outside at the economy, you know, someone said to me the other day, "Oh, it's just so hard. It's an election and people just do this and this and this." And she told me all the things that people are doing, which isn't lending to them spending in business.
Yeah.
And I said, "Is that what you want? You've just prescribed and told me a story. Is that what you want?" Because she was very convinced of it. And I said, "The man who started Revlon, he started that in the Great Depression.
Yeah.
He was making, lipsticks and nail polish. Like he became a millionaire in the Great Depression." So again, it comes back to what do you choose to believe? And I get it. I can hear you now, some of you saying, "Yeah, but this is happening. What do you want me to believe? This is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at this in black and smudge. What do you want me to do with that?" Well, I want you to observe it. And then I want you to think, what do I want? I don't want this, which points to me wanting that. So I've got clarity now. And if that was what I had, what would that look like? How would I feel? And as you now walk through your days of doing what it is that you're asked to do every day by the situation you're in, I want you to take a spirit of that that's lined up with your vision. I don't know if any of you have read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I listened to it on the way home I was overseas in 2020 and couldn't get home, which was great because I spent a lot of time with Bob Proctor. But on the flight home in October, I listened to the audiobook of that and it blew me away. This man whose life work was destroyed. He was in a concentration camp, lost his family. They took his wedding band. Nothing was left. And he just said to himself, they can't take my ability to choose what I think about. And he had a sense of humor, which he wouldn't let go of either. And I think if he can do that, I can do anything.
Yeah, that is incredibly, incredibly true. We often talk with our clients about the gap between what they want and what they believe is possible. And this can go two ways. Sometimes they believe that the possibilities are endless or limitless, and other times they believe that the possibilities are very limited to them. And I wonder, so maybe there's two parts to this question. Where we have this clouded version of what is possible, how do we change that into the version we would like it to be? And then how do we start to close the gap between what we want and what we believe might be possible?
Such a good question. And this is the heart of the work because we do live in a physical world. So when you think about even when you go to what you think is possible, I want to take you back to your desire again. Like when you have a heartfelt desire, and that's the thing I want you to tap into. Like when my daughter was in such a dark place and had been for many years, my heart's desire was for her to be well and better. And it was such a true desire. Now, there were days when I didn't think that would be possible. But when I hooked into the belief that my desire was indicative of what was possible, what changes when we do that is that we stop trying to figure out how it's possible. And I think that's what people get keyed into. It's not that they don't think it's possible, they just don't know how it is possible.
Yeah.
And that's what affects the way they feel. And so our work is to be the visionary, which comes from your heart, the desires of your heart, and then to live in the attitude and the spirit of that being possible and letting go of the how, because it will happen in divine right timing. And I'm not religious. I'm just saying that there is a gestation period, if you like, for everything. So you give birth to an idea, a vision, and you say, yes, you decide this is happening. And you say, I'm open to it happening any which way, but I just know this thing because I feel it in me. And it's at that point, I've got a colleague who comes to mind when I talk about this, where he just had tried everything and he was at his wit's end. You know, he's in this work. He fell on his bed in tears and he's just like, I give up. I can't work this out. And the very next day he had a phone call which changed everything. It's almost like he'd given over to the powers that be, right?
I think the tighter you try to control it, the harder it is to get.
Yeah. Our job is to live in the joy of the vision even before it's especially before it's manifest, because that will allow its arrival with and through you. Make no mistake, with and through you, not just by us sitting and doing nothing. You'll feel inspired if you'll stay in that. Yeah.
I think we should be clear, considering our audience. We do not believe that you can sit in a room and do nothing and act and just physically do nothing and something's going to arrive at your feet. That's not the way it works.
No, not at all.
Yeah. There's
Emotion, when you feel something, it demands action. Like watch a little child when they're really excited. They don't just sit there and tell you they're excited.
I really don't. Very physical. I think manifestations received quite some negative connotations in the last umpteen years. And I think it's really important to understand that there is a way of being, there's a way of moving forward, there's a way of creating, and it's not necessarily, well, it's most definitely not through the control that we're all taught we must have. But it also, conversely, is not sitting in a room and just imagining it to be true and it becomes true.
No, I think the key words for me are desire, because we all have desire for what we want, and then the joy. So letting your path, like step on those stones that are joyful as you pick your path, and it will fly in the face of what other people might say is what you have to do or should do. Yeah.
Yes, that's a very interesting point. Okay, if a tradie listening right now wanted to start working on their mindset, but without the fluff and the overwhelm that is unfortunately pretty abundant out there in the world, where should they begin, Di?
I would say appreciation. If they will just, and even if they want to be really bold and keep an appreciation journal, just somewhere where at the end of the day or the beginning of the day they can go, well, this is what I appreciated about today. And if they want to stretch it a bit further, what I appreciate about myself today.
Nice.
Those two things, yeah, if they'll do that habitually, they'll notice things start to shift. Because, again, who we become is going to influence what we experience.
I think that's a fantastic suggestion. Di, you know this to be true. I could sit here and talk to you all day long. In fact, we've done it a few times. I am, thank you, fascinated by this work and the place it can take our people. And I have seen some pretty big shifts in some of the people that we work with as they start to work on their mindset. And I'm sure there are lots of people listening to this podcast episode today that would like to find out more about you. Where do they go to find out about you?
Yes, website is DILIVE, so DILIVE.com.au. That will tell you quite a bit. And to be honest, I'm very happy for you to email me it's just di@dilive.com.au, because I do love to chat with people where they're at.
I will make sure that all of those avenues to reach out to you are in the show notes. So if you are listening to this and thinking, I need to have a conversation with Di, or I'd like to find out more, just scroll down below to the bottom of the episode show notes and you'll be able to find links for both of those. Di, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. And thank you for chatting with me so regularly. I love it.
I love it too.
Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Tradies in Business podcast with Nicole Cox. Find out more about today's guest, tools for your trade business, and other cool stuff at tradiesinbusiness.com.au.